You are going to edit this, right?
Nope, I'm leaving that in.
Okay. You can leave that part in. That's okay.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Small Business Small Talk. I am very excited, as I usually am, to have all of my guests in for this season in 2020 because I've had fabulous guests and it's wonderful conversations. And I'm so glad that you are here as well. If you're either watching through a YouTube channel or the Facebook page, Facebook videos, or if you're listening through the podcast services like Spotify, iTunes, and all of the others that are out there. I just want to thank you for continuing to listen, to enjoy and engage with us. Tell us what you like and comment about your own experiences and things that we're talking about too. So Small Business Small Talk is a podcast that helps educate you and engage you more in your own community to help you maybe inspire you to do your own big thing. But we also provide some entertainment along the way because let's face it, all of us business people take what we do very, very seriously, but not ourselves so much. So we kind of bring that environment to this podcast because we also like to have some fun with it. I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor partner, which is the Chamber of St. Matthews. They have been great in supporting this through the Affinity Partnership because I am your host, Christy Smallwood. I am the Chief Strategic Guide for Eagle Eye Strategies based here in Louisville, Kentucky. We are an affinity partner for the Chamber, and that means we're a partner with the Chamber to help accomplish good things in the Chamber. So it's a benefit to both the membership and the Chamber organization itself. They are a sponsor partner for this podcast. And it's honestly where I've been pulling my season 2 guests from for 2020, because there's so many Chamber members. Why not hear everybody's story as much as possible? So with that, I want to welcome in this episode's guest, Marissa Neal. Okay, now before I even let her start talking, because I know you can see her on the screen if you're watching the video, you missed a lot of great green room conversation. And as you already heard, yeah, I that's not ever going to go public. So you miss a lot of fun whenever you're not here. Don't miss the episode itself, because Marissa does something that's very unique in all of these conversations. She helps with government contracting. Right?
I do.
Yeah.
That is correct.
And so it's one of those things that, like we don't, some businesses at a small business level may not even think about this, but then others are like, how do I grow? And of course, the first thing that people have told me is, as I'm working with them, like, the government has money. Why don't I just work with them? Like,
why don't you just work with them?
I don't know. Why would
I know we're coming up on Halloween. It's not that scary. That's what I help people. It's not that scary.
And so that's why people like Marissa exist, is because she helps figure that stuff out. So whenever it gets more complicated, she's able to step in and make things a lot easier and guide you in the right direction. Because some places may have, the proverbial swamps you want to avoid, the pitfalls, the 1970s quicksand. Remember the quicksand was a big deal in all the shows?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Help to avoid the quicksand in certain areas. So Marissa, how did you even get started doing stuff like this? So give us a little bit of your backstory.
Okay. Well, I'm not from Kentucky, although I've been here since the 90s. So a long time.
It counts.
I grew up in Florida. I am still a Floridian. And yes, all of those people really are that crazy. So I live here now. All right. Which is nonprofits. I will still claim Florida. I was actually born in Daytona Beach in a hospital that you can see the racetrack. So NASCAR all the way. Yeah. All my life, all the way. NASCAR, beach. Yeah. The whole deal. Went to Southern Baptist University there. Kind of worked in some nonprofits, made my way to Alabama for a little bit, and then moved up here. My first job here was at the Center for Women and Families, so still very nonprofit. Decided, hey, nothing against people who work there, but I just needed more money in my life. It's God love all of them. So decided to go back and get a master's degree in public administration with a concentration in urban planning. So if you think government contracting is political. Urban planning, super political, but truly enjoyed it. Worked at kind of the precursor of Develop Louisville. Then went back, earned an MBA. Let's see, I was a consultant at GLI for a while, and then started working for state government. So first job in state government was at the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. And then in 2000, I got an opportunity to over to Frankfurt in the finance cabinet with my best boss ever. And he was a brilliant man. He was 31 years, non-merit employee, meaning he was an at-will employee over there for 31 years, almost unheard of, and wasn't political. He was so smart, nobody would get rid of him. There was really no replacement for him. He was awesome. He dealt with all of the federal grants with the state, and was an internal auditor for state government as well, and just super man. So went over, and he was looking for somebody who was used to working on committees and a lot of different issues, didn't have a whole lot of experience with procurement. Hey, so I had done all of that. And so I went in for the next many years, worked on the policies the Finance and Administration Cabinet has for accounting, procurement, and capital construction. I also kind of worked on those policies. I worked on regulations, worked on was on a committee 8 a.m. every Thursday, figuring out what was wrong with the system that the state uses for accounting and procurement.
I much prefer my 8 a.m. Monday morning.
Yeah,
than
that was
procurement.
It took a lot of coffee, and I had to drive to Frankfurt first. But yeah, and so I got to work with all of the cabinets doing that and really find out how state government worked, and did that for quite a while, and did training on the proper policies. Talked to a lot of people, and just really had a great time with that, until my favorite boss of all times retired. And so stayed on, did that for a while longer, ultimately moved over to Economic Development Cabinet, where I managed the Procurement Technical Assistance Center for Kentucky. So I say PTAC, and even if I say the long word, I'm like, what the heck is that? So DOD, Department of Defense, every state, I believe it's still every state, has a PTAC in it, where you can get free help. Hey, free is good, especially when you're just starting out and you don't know what any of the acronyms mean. If you don't know what DOD or DODAC or just I could go on. Any of those, it's a really good place to start. They have now, it's no longer part of state government. It's funded somewhat by state government. But they'll kind of help you with the basics, and really can't say enough about that. So managed that statewide program for a while. We had thousands of small businesses that worked with across the state, and really enjoyed that. And then I thought, okay, I've been around for a while. I'm just going to retire. And so in July of 12, I launched my own consulting company, and just truly enjoyed working with small businesses. The problem with the PTAC is there were thousands of clients. So now I'm very selective in who I work with. I try to never have more than 10 clients at a time, and really help them, work with them much more hand in hand, sometimes hand holding, kind of meet them wherever they are. If they're a new business, I've helped startups. I've worked with companies that have been in business for 20 years, just to really make sure that they are excelling and hopefully succeeding with government contracting. And so that's local, state, federal, around here, mostly federal government contracting.
It's a difference between the state and federal level of what you're getting yourself into.
Absolutely. Every political subdivision, hey, there's a word, you have to figure out what that is. So every city, it's not where you live. So if the city, like City of Louisville, has accepted accepted the model procurement code. So they follow the state rules plus a few that they throw in. But like the airport authority here has not. So they have their own set of rules. And then there's quasi-government, so MSD, LG&E, that have another set of rules, but they might have some federal rules that they're having to follow because they're getting so much federal money. So there's kind of some federal rules there. Local governments here can be if they don't follow the model procurement code, it could be pretty loose as to what they do. Now this is probably 15 years ago, there was a city somewhere in Kentucky that actually in their solicitation said that the solicitation was posted at the local convenience store. And if you wanted to know what it was, you had to go to the convenience store to find out. So yeah. So,
I'm guessing this was before the internet.
No, this was like 10 years ago. There was the internet 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it hadn't been invented 10 years ago.
Would you at least have a newspaper in your local area? Like, we're going to post this. I'm used to saying we have to post it in the paper. We have to do this. Like, there's at least 3 things that are major outlets.
Yeah. So it depends on what government you are.
But the convenience store has never been on my marketing plan.
That is, yeah, seriously. Well, and if you weren't anywhere near that, you probably weren't going to be bidding on it either. So there's that level all the way up to, the states, and every state has different rules, very different rules. The different cities, universities have their own set of rules. And then the federal government, and even within the federal government, I think sometimes folks don't realize. So to throw out some more acronyms, there's the FARs, so the FARs, which is generally what everybody follows. But if you're going to work for the DoD, there's the DFARs, and if you're going to work for the Army, there's other FAR clauses that only apply there. So that's why. But I tell people, you're not going to learn it in 6 months. You're not going to learn it in a year. I've been doing this for more than 20 years now. Things change every day. The day that we're recording this, over the weekend, GSA changed the way that you log in to see all of the solicitations that are posted. So I got in no problem, but I bet a lot of other people did not. So, things are updated, policies change all the time. There was what's a lot of people are talking about right now. There was an executive order that all federal contractors, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to speak to it, talk to your attorney, talking about diversity and disparity training, and the amount of that you can have if you are a federal contractor, even if you don't have a current contract. So, things change daily, which is kind of fun. This is, so I've been a little over 8 years. I've had my own company, longest I've ever had one job by far, and love it every day. I love working with my clients. I love figuring out how they can increase their revenue, hire more people. Not all of my clients are in Kentucky, so that's, I would like more now with COVID. I'm trying to not have them too far afield, or it's going to be all virtual. But the folks in Kentucky don't really go after government contracting the way that other states do either.
Can you share an example of something that might seem a little like, here's an example of what a government contract looks like? Like, what would you do? Like, what's even available for government contracting besides like construction?
You name it. There was literally, I've seen them recently, everything from Halloween candy, all the way up to, really, really very complex IT projects. There is
Halloween candy, hang on. Halloween
candy. Yeah, that's going to be low bid. So if you've got a line on really cheap candy, I forget what city it was, but it was a city in Kentucky that was buying Halloween candy.
Okay.
And I see that one every year. There's some city around here, or several. I think I only saw the one this year.
So, but okay, let's just say you have a low bid Halloween candy type of contract. You get the contract. Now you're in the system though. So does that open you up to other opportunities because now you're in the system?
It can. once you register as a vendor, you can get the notification. So you don't have to have a contract before you register as a vendor. But if you, so state government at the state, upper state level, so that was a pretty small contract. But if it's going to be more than an agency's small purchase limit, so say you're buying $40,000 worth of Halloween candy, then there's going to be one buyer in finance and administration cabinet that handles all of the food purchases. So then you get to know that person really well. If you have any kind of food products, and believe me, the state buys a lot for the prison systems, other agencies, they buy a lot of food, and not and catering too. So yeah. So yeah, and they buy marketing. They have folks that design their websites. There are all sorts of contracts. So my company right now, I have 7 state contracts. So there you go. You just, yeah, it's once you start looking and you kind of figure out, which is also what I tell clients. So you really can't approach it effectively as let's go out and see what there is, because your head will explode. You really have to figure out what you're better at than anybody else, and then figure out who's buying that. And so just had this conversation with somebody recently. I don't do development. I do capture planning. So some of this is more of a slow burn than I'm going out doing actual business development, where you're trying to find folks to talk to. This is doing research, figuring out who buys what you're selling, who your competitors are, how you can be better at that job than your competitors, what's going to differentiate you from them. What did their bid look like? The great thing about government contracting, not always, but most of the agencies, and certainly federal and state level, you can do a FOIA or an open records request and get copies of previous contracts. If they're not posted, you'll know what the pricing is. You'll figure out if that's something that, if you can meet that pricing, if you can meet everything that agency wants. So it's yeah, so you don't come at it, it's not the same way, and it's a lot of research. The win rate is for small business, average across the board is about 35%. So you're going to bid 3 times win 1, more or less. And if you're in, yeah, well, and so everything that's less than $150,000 in federal contracting automatically has to go to small businesses. And then there's other small business set-asides. So that's why I think around here, I kind of push folks more towards federal contracting. Our state, Kentucky, is the only one around here that does not have goals for doing business with small business, women-owned business, minority-owned business, veteran-owned businesses. Just
I
really
don't doubt whatsoever. Just knowing.
Yeah, but so the problem with that is, then you run into, who's registered in SAM. So if you look at Illinois, that has a really robust program, it's over 3,000 just women-owned businesses. So it's Women in Business Month in October. So women businesses, I think it's around 3,700 in Illinois. And then you go to maybe 23 in Ohio, it's around 16 in Tennessee, 12-ish, a little more than 12-ish in Indiana, and then 737. I know it's 737, or it was last week. Women-owned businesses in Kentucky are registered in SAM. So SAM is the first step.
What's the difference between, is there a difference between being a registered women-owned business and a certified?
Yes. So SAM, I've just and you're not even necessarily 100%. And I could explain. Okay, I'm gonna explain it this way. So I'm talking about federal contracting. Okay. So before you can even bid, no matter who you are, and even if you get grant money, you have to be registered in something called SAM.gov, System of Awards Management. Okay. So you have to be registered there. So that has nothing to do with anything. And right now you can self-certify. And I say right now, the 15th, you can no longer self-certify as 15th of October, you can no longer self-certify as a woman-owned business in SAM.
Okay, so that's on my list of things to do this week.
Well, it's going to take a little longer than that because SBA has a website now, and people women started putting their information back in July when the final rules came out. So there's a bit of a wait. So for right now, there's kind of a bit of a grace period, but you can no longer self-certify. And it's for the WOSB program. I guess I should say that too. So federal world, that's when it gets really complicated really quickly.
Yeah, because I'm already run into trouble. Track of all of these different things that.
Yeah. So there's women-owned business, small business. And you would think that you're a woman-owned small business, but not necessarily, because the SBA, and their wisdom, named a program that is only for certain types of businesses that are in certain NAICS codes that they have set-asides and some other benefits. But you have to be within those NAICS codes. So that's a woman-owned small business. So yes. Do not mark in SAM that you're a woman-owned small business unless now, if the SBA has actually certified you as that, or one of the third-party certifiers.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you just listened to like the last 5 minutes of the reason why you need to hire somebody like Marissa to navigate this right here. So yeah.
But yeah, so I'm not new to it. It's 20 years. I can rattle this off, and I try not to talk in too many acronyms. But the problem being, if you look at 3,700 women saying that they're women-owned businesses in Illinois versus 700 here, we're never ever, women-owned businesses are never going to get as much federal contracting dollars. So that's bad for the state. I mean, that's jobs lost, that's tax dollars lost. And then if you look at even the dichotomy, and I could break this down for veteran or minority or just small, but because it's October, I know last week I looked, so it was around 80 during fiscal year 19. It was around $80 million that women-owned businesses that are headquartered in Kentucky were awarded federal contracts worth about $80 million. But the converse of that was $152 million that were awarded to women-owned businesses for projects in Kentucky. So certainly not all of that 80 million that Kentucky-owned businesses, not all of that's in Kentucky, but there's a lot of women-owned businesses who are coming here and taking contracts because there just aren't that many women, minorities, veterans, small businesses in general who are going after federal contracts here. So that has been a problem. And it's really a problem because the state government here doesn't have goals. So, I'm not big on big government, believe it or not, even though government contracting, even if it was small government, they'd still be buying a lot. But that's, government contracting is one of the things where the state government really has to step up. So if, there's the EDGE program in Ohio that's phenomenal, that really helps minority and women-owned businesses grow, gives them tools, helps them with contracting, has goals for prime contracts and subcontracts in Ohio. It's a fabulous program. And Ohio is doing a lot of other things with small businesses that unfortunately Kentucky's not doing. And the chambers here are great. St. Matthew's Chamber is great. GLI tries, but if you don't have that buy-in in Frankfurt, it's not going to happen. And so all Illinois has goals for women, minorities, veterans. Indiana has goals. Ohio has goals. Tennessee has goals. West Virginia does not have goals. So it's kind of us in West Virginia. Yeah, let's not be, West Virginia, they're lovely people, really like Blanco glass, but yeah, it's just, not something to really aspire to be when you have these other states that are doing so well economically who are helping their small businesses. So that's really one of the reasons I like helping companies figure out government contracting. It's a stable source of revenue for the most part that really helps companies grow.
So help me know if I'm thinking correctly. In that, if the state does not have goals for small business growth in each of its segments, like a woman-owned, veteran-owned, minority, that kind of thing, if there's no goals set, then there's probably no promotion around the availability of such things out there. So like, there's not a push to, hey, did you ever think about getting federal grant money? Like, how did you ever think about doing federal contracting? Like,
well, there's a PTAC here. So when I retired, the PTAC went away for a couple of years after I left, but it's back now. So there's that, but that's funded half by the Department of Defense. But there's no opportunities. So I said I have 7 state contracts, but I am competing with folks from all over the country and all different size companies. So there's nothing that would help me as a woman-owned small business win contracts here. It's a free-for-all, it's best value, which, if that's the policy stance that you make, that you want to have the best value for the state, that's okay. So that's what the state does. They're going to say it's best value all the time. Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee has made a decision that they want to help their small businesses grow. And government contracting is one way that they can directly do that. And that's something that Kentucky doesn't do. The only goals are in the transportation cabinet for folks that are DVE certified, but that's a federal mandate. That's not the state doing anything. That's the state being told by the federal government that thou shalt.
Thou
yes.
shalt.
Yes.
Love that. Thou shalt. Yes, you have to do these things. Okay, so what has been one of the biggest challenges that you've had to deal with over the years, and since you started your business? What's a big challenge that you personally have had to overcome?
Wow. Time management. So I'm kind of ahead of the curve because I've been working from home, because when I worked in economic development, I traveled all the time. So that's the one thing I wanted. I wanted a home office. So yes, I've had 8 years to figure out time management and how to make that actually work. Because when I first started doing this, it could be like a week and I hadn't done anything because there was so many distractions. That, and then I think really I have folks that work for me, but they're all remote too. So kind of figuring out how to have some balance there with people who are also in business. So the chamber, St. Matthew's Chamber has been great since I've joined it. But I'm a member of the Downtown Louisville Rotary, and I'm still active in Junior League and really kind of connecting into the community, which was something that, quite frankly, I couldn't do when I worked in Frankfurt because, I had that commute and I worked, and gosh, even when other people weren't earn comp time or overtime, I was still working Saturdays. I don't know how that worked out. I never had the cushy state job with it. The mythical cushy state job. That I never had that one.
You're looking around going, where's that job? What?
Yeah, I've seen them, I've witnessed them, but I never had one of those. And quite frankly, I think I would have gotten bored with it. So that's okay.
And I just earlier today finished a conversation about time management. Like, how do you structure, or do you structure, and how do you stop the interruptions, and how do you deal with the expectations, and how do you plan ahead? Do you plan it? Like, what do you do with it? So what are some tips that you would give somebody that you've learned so far about your version of time management?
Yeah, don't plan too much in the day. So one of the great things that my best boss ever, his name was Fred Hill. He's passed away, but he was truly a great man. So he had us track time. just, even though we were state employees, we tracked billable hours. So I did that for years, and we worked 37 and a half hours a week. We did not plan in billing 37 and a half hours. It just wasn't humanly possible. So you got to have free time beyond just breaks. So don't plan, 8 hours of work. If you can get 4 hours of actual concentrated work in a day, you're good. And look at it that way. Don't be so hard on yourself. If you're working virtually for the first time, it's not, when you were in the office, if you really think about it, chances are you were not working every second of the day. If you were, you don't remember any of your coworkers' names or their birthdays or any, like, what they looked like, probably. I mean, people just don't do that. But for some reason, when we come and you're working virtually, you're expected, okay, I've got 7.5 or 8 hours of time to fill. And it's just not reasonable to do. And I'm so blessed right now not to have children that I'm trying to homeschool too. So if you have that, I'm like 2 hours. And I don't think that it's unreasonable for folks to still consider you a really excellent employee if you're getting a couple hours of work done and everything else that's going on. If you were performing before, if your boss is giving you a hard time, go do something else. And I will say too, you don't have to have a company to be a contractor. There are a lot of gig work. There's a lot of, they're just looking for one person to do something for a little while because there's an extra project. Yeah. So, it's not all small business, this, that, and the other. Yeah. So something else to think about too.
Yeah. I mean, that's good to know because, okay, so here's part of why I asked the other question along that. There's not enough promotion around it. You are the person I would go to even think about this kind of stuff. There's nothing that actually just kind of comes to me to say, hey, did you ever think about doing this? So where could we plug into something like that to get more information about how do we even get started? What kind of stuff would be available? Is any of that information even there? How do we?
It is. You could, yeah. So once you register in SAM, you can set up a search. So you don't have to go to SAM every day and look at it. It will just send you emails. Or the state of Kentucky, you'll tell it, when you register as a vendor, you tell them what commodity codes you're interested in, and you'll just get emails every time something is posted that may or may not interest you. But yeah, so you don't have to go out and do all of that searching. Now, when you get down to the little, podunk cities, you're out of luck. But
you can go to the convenience store for that.
Yes. But the city of Louisville, Lexington, JCPS, Fayette County schools, they'll all send you information. I even get it from J-Town here. So, J-Town's actually a pretty big city. But, it's not just the metropolitan areas that are sending you information. And then MSD will send out things. So it's just how many emails do you want to get? And then the PTAC does have a service, although they'll do bid match, and they'll do that for free. I caution people not to rely on that too much because it's a keyword search and it's based on whatever the keywords up at the top are that the buyer puts in. So if they put in gobbledygook to start at the beginning, nobody's ever going to see it. So if you're really interested in working for a lower than federal agency, I would say to register as a vendor with them and have those direct emails sent to you.
That's cool. And I can include that information in the description of this episode, right? Can you share a link with me that I can make sure that's out?
I would be happy to. Yep. We can do that afterwards. Yeah.
Perfect.
To start with. Yes.
Watching, make sure you look at the description, the comment section, summary section, and there'll be a link for that resource tool in there. And of course, I'll also include Marissa's information. So, because you definitely want to be hooking up with her. She knows what she's doing here. Okay. So we talked about your challenges. We know what you love to do about it, helping people find new opportunities. What's the biggest piece, and we know you've had a favorite boss, right? So what's the biggest piece of advice that you've got that has impacted your life the most?
Well, yeah, a couple. Tiara Wayne, who passed away earlier this year, she was one of my first clients when I started out, and she gave me really good advice to not overspend. And look how that's helped. I mean, seriously, you cannot go out and, if you got a PPP loan, I hope that you're actually using it not to buy frivolous things. When you start out as a small business, everything takes more money than you think it's going to. So she gave me some really sage advice there. You don't have to start out with all the bells and whistles when you get going. It, over time, it builds over time. Don't spend a lot of money. And then other people over the years, don't take the easy path. If you're always going to do what's easy, gosh, especially in federal contracting, how are you ever going to differentiate yourself? So you have to find something, look at the hard challenges and how are you going to solve those? So I think that's when I took the procurement job, not knowing all that. I mean, grants great, but actual procurement law, I've learned a lot. But yeah, that was I don't know how many people applied for that job, quite frankly, but well, and I was probably really totally overwhelmed and hated it for the first 6 months. But it's that same thing. So I understand when people start in not understanding government contracting, because it can be very overwhelming. It can be very rewarding as well. The federal government has a clause in some of the contracts where you don't even have to get a PPP loan. They'll just continue to pay you during the pandemic if everything was shut down and you couldn't come in to do your job, because they don't want their contractors to go out of business. They want you to be ready and there the moment that things open back up. So they just continued to pay a lot of government contractors who weren't able to perform their jobs. So yeah, I know, look at that. And you get paid within 30 days if you're small. That is not a problem unless there's some issue with your invoice or your pricing, or there's an actual issue. Then they might question it. But yeah, it can be a really nice piece of your strategic plan for your company. But diversification, always important too. So commercial clients, government clients, not all of either one of them.
Right. No, absolutely. You need to make sure your portfolio is healthy and thriving in all areas, not just one thing, because we all know if you're relying on the one and that one goes away for whatever reason, then what? So that's why having this diversification of, whether it be offerings, or was it Warren Buffett that said you should always have 7 lines of revenue in?
Yeah, that's if you're looking local, state, federal, commercial, just so if something happens with any of them,
you're not relying on just one to fuel everything coming in from all aspects. Yeah,
and you're not going to freak out and have to lay off employees and immediately decide what you're going to do. And I'll say too, government contracting is not immediate. So
let's set that expectation.
It's not like, oh, hey, I'm having a bad cash flow this month, let me go. It might happen. The best I know, back when there were tornadoes and flooding in eastern Kentucky, and FEMA came in, and I called this man. So I was one of my jobs PTAC, so I was helping FEMA source some material that they were going to need. One of them was computers. I called this man in Western Kentucky and told him that I needed basically $400,000 worth of laptops. And he thought that I was a crank call, because who was going to call out of the blue with like, I need them, and I need them, like, how quickly can you get them?
Nigerian friend, that's it.
Well, not anymore, but when I was a state employee, because, well, he was small, and he was in the geographic area that we needed him to be in. And so then he was really excited about government contracting after that. But that is not a typical first contract story, but it could happen. And that only happened because he was registered in SAM to be a vendor. And I found him when I was doing a search. So yeah, it can be as easy as that. I'm going to guarantee you it's not going to be as easy as that. But you never know. Most of the time, it takes a couple of years to actually get in, figure it out, start making a decent amount of money at it. And it depends on your industry too. So that's a little variable. If you're selling the Halloween candy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think with anything, you got to get in and establish, some credibility, a presence. You've got to prove yourself. You got to, shoot. Even Instagram won't let you attach your shop unless you've proven you're going to stick around as a shop. So
right.
Like if we're looking at federal contracts, we need to prove that there's a lot that has to go in that to prove that we're worthy to even accept the money. You can't just go in thinking, I'm going to get a government contract and I'm golden.
Yeah, because they actually look at your accounting system to make sure that you can accept the money. But we'll talk about that some other time. So there's all these things. And it depends on how much money, how large your contract is too. Yeah. So if you have no experience and you take credit cards, the federal government, they can spend up to $10,000 on a credit card without just calling one company up. And then it kind of ratchets up from there and different levels. So then once you get up to the multi-billion-dollar contracts, there's a lot more rules. So it's not one size fits all for the rules. The rules are much looser at $150,000 or less. Which for a lot of small businesses, if you get, 4 or 5 $150,000 contracts and, you have a pretty decent margin in there, that's okay to start with. And we haven't talked about subcontracting too. So there's no reason that you have to always bid as a prime. If there's a larger contract and you can perform one portion of that, then do that and let the prime carry all of the heavy compliance. There's still compliance for the first and second tier subs, but as you're learning the ropes, that can be a really nice way to do it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, so even even after this conversation, even I feel like I have more opportunity to get in and do stuff at a federal contracting level. So
absolutely. And there's training, there's training. Agencies want you to come in and train. So marketing, strategic. Yes. There's definitely, there used to be a whole lot more training, and hopefully in the future there'll be more. But if you can do virtual training, and very good at it. So there's still training going on. Yes.
Interesting.
And that
we'll have to chat again in the green room.
Okay.
Okay, so as we wrap up for this episode of Small Business Small Talk, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give other women business owners specifically? Or other business owners. We don't have to exclude the guys, but as a business owner, what advice would you give them?
Well, if you're going after government contracts, make sure that you can actually perform the contract. So the best way to get yourself excluded from ever being awarded one is to really have poor performance. So there's federal contracting, there's something called CPARs where they rate how well you did. So all of the other contracting officers in federal government can see that. If you have, one bad experience, it's really, really going to hinder your ability. So don't overstate your capabilities. But consider it, bid it, and see. It's I'm always amazed at how successful companies can be.
That is fantastic. Marissa, this has been a lot of great information. And again, I'm going to put your information in the description as well as a link up to Sam. And that way people can, if you're not set up as a vendor yet, the worst case scenario is you're going to get a bunch of emails. So set up your search features, all that kind of stuff. Get in there, figure it out. If you have any questions, call Marissa and, set up with that one-on-one, and she can certainly be available to, answer any questions to guide you to the next step, or just basically hire her. Just quit asking questions to yourself and just hire her to help, because that's really what you want to do. So I do want to give another shout out to our, actually, before I do the shout outs, do you have any last parting, like, don't forget this, or this was funny, or any last parting comments?
Now, this whole thing has been funny. And for some reason,
the whole thing has been funny.
You all just missed the conversation before was even better. But yeah.
Well, I loved it. So here's the thing, my watching you on video, again, for those of you who are only listening, you're missing out if you missed the video part. But she lights up when she talks about this stuff. Like, when people enjoy what they do, you light up about it. And I've never seen anybody have so much enjoyment talking about governmental contracting stuff. Like, you're the only one I know that enjoys it.
It's like hunting. So I'm not killing animals, but it's, it's stalking and figuring out how do you get the money, and who, and you're actually performing a service for government. So let's not,
yes,
there's hopefully some good that's coming out of what you're doing. Hopefully. But yeah. And
because remember, if you don't do what you say you're going to do for the government, they won't ask you to do it again.
They won't. And if you do a really bad job, they'll put you in prison. But we won't talk about that right now either.
Yeah. Boom. And we're done. Oh, ouch. Okay. Just so y'all know.
Actually, no, not if you do a bad job, if you lie to them. So don't lie about being small or woman-owned or any of that. Bad things will happen. Yes.
True, yeah.
Yes.
So, Marissa, again, thank you so much for your time today. And for all of you watching and listening, I thank you for your time as well, because that means so much to me that you have paid attention to us and you've invested your time today to hopefully learn something new and to be slightly entertained by what we bring to the energy in the room, or your car, or wherever you are today. So I thank you for watching this episode, listening to this episode of Small Business Small Talk. I've been your host, Christy Smallwood. I want to again thank my guest, Marissa Neal, with MMN Consulting.
Thank you, Christy.
And shout out to the Chamber of St. Matthews for being my sponsor partner. And remember, subscribe to the channels. You can even ask Alexa to play the latest episode for Small Business Small Talk, and she'll do it. So that is definitely one thing you can count on her doing correctly, is playing the latest episode of Small Business Small Talk. And with that, catch us again on the next episode. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.